Good afternoon, folks. It's your old pal Colby Evans here with another episode of the ARCA Racing Podcast presented by Menards. As of course, I'm your host, Colby Evans, aka Start and Park Car on YouTube and Start and Park Car on Twitter. Go follow my buddy Brad Smith. Go follow ARCA Racing. And we're going to introduce you guys to a new one of my favorite drivers. You can go follow him and almost buy one of his favorite race cars. We got a great show for you guys today. We're covering the big race at All American Speedway, which saw an interesting finish, a family-owned team get the win, and 5 drivers having a chance at the championship. Realistically 6, but logistically about 5 drivers. So let's get right into it, folks. We have the Napa 150, which has kind of been... Can we just... Let's just get into Napa. God bless them. They've been such a mainstay in the West Series, sponsoring Bill McAnally and sponsoring so many races. God bless Napa. But Napa 150, and overall, another solid field. I think it's safe to say that when the West Series alone is getting bigger fields than the main series, it's kind of a problem. And a lot of people would say, oh, why don't we just merge all 3 series? Logistically, guys, it would be an utter nightmare. These West teams who don't really have big budgets. Most of these teams do not have haulers. If I'm correct, I believe it's Sunrise Ford Racing, and Bill McAnally's team are the only teams who really have haulers. I know the Pedroncelli team have trailers. Burgess uses a trailer. Jerry Pitts Racing doesn't really use. It's kind of a mixture. It's a big trailer. It's not a hauler, but it's just a big trailer. And so does Bobby Hillis. Most of the field uses trailers. I believe Josh Finopoulos, though, I believe he also has a hauler. So logistically, that right there shows their budget. Logistically, trying to get these teams to track like, let's say, Dover would be a nightmare. The drive would be completely unfair, and the purse money for that kind of a drive would be a joke. They would burn that kind of money just going to the race itself. So for the people who are saying that the West Series needs to merge, no. For now, let's keep the West Series over there, and if anything, have the East Series simply merge into the main series. That's what I hope what happens. But we had a great field of cars. We had 23 drivers, like usual. Past couple of races, kind of the same faces since our last race at the Vegas Bull Ring. Still the same field. We had only one start and park, which has kind of been the mainstay for the season. PJ Pedroncelli and father Paul Pedroncelli simply doing the start and park in the 31, which again I don't believe is even really set up for a road race, but no, not really. Short track. I don't think it was really set up right. Very slow in practice. He's not even out there to try. Last place is a mere $1,000. But hey, you do it. You do your cards right, you can make a profit. If you play your cards right without bringing tires and fuel, you can make a profit off of that car just simply running a couple laps and banking $1,000. So realistically, we had 22 cars in this race, but 22 cars that were very competitive, actually. Even all the way back to the 22nd place car, really not that far off. Bobby Hillis was only a couple of seconds off in practice, but of course the cars got a little faster and fell a bit faster. But overall, we had a very competitive field, which we saw in pictures and in the opening pace laps of the race, the Kamree, the good old Kamree, Kamree. Bobby Hillis brought it back, and it ran the full race. She ran the full race, albeit very slow, but that's kind of Bobby's budget, less than 0. And it was kind of sad to hear him announce later on his Twitter, which I have in the description, that this was the last race of the Kamree, unfortunately. Probably more than likely due to ARCA rules, the older style bodies, which gives off a Gen 4 vibe look. Not sure if it's a Gen 4 car, actually. I've heard one of my buddies said it's not actually a Gen 4 car, it just looks like one. Unfortunately, it ran its last race, more than likely due to ARCA mandating composite bodies. And Bobby does have a couple of composite cars. He's got a yellow one and he's got an orange one. I believe he's got two of them. But he usually brings this car out to, the races where, they could possibly get pretty beaten up. And it looks like ARCA said you can probably bring it here, but that's the last one. Mainly because he can't bring that thing to Phoenix because that's too big of a track for those older cars. But Bobby did announce that if you guys want to buy the car, this is your chance, folks. If you guys want to buy an ARCA car, here's your chance. Unfortunately, you can no longer race it in ARCA, but the Kamree is up for sale. DM him on Twitter. It's in the link in the description. And let's get an ARCA car. We might crowdfund an ARCA car. Go race it in the Superstock series. But and for all the Earnhardt fans out there, well, you guys may not know about that Kamree 27 car. That is a Dale Earnhardt chassis. Yep, that is a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated chassis that Bobby Hillis raced in last weekend's ARCA Menard Series West race. So for any Earnhardt fans out there, you want to own a Dale Earnhardt Incorporated chassis? There's your chance. Not really sure on the price. We had a DMM for that, but strongly suggest if you're interested, go get it. Piece of history alone because it's an Earnhardt chassis, but just thought I'd throw that little tidbit out there. And glad Bobby ran the full race. Was worried that the last race for the Kamree would be a start and park, but luckily it was not. Even just in the first couple laps, there was no real dominant car. We only had a couple of leaders in the race. Only 5 people led laps. But overall, no one could really pull away from the leaders, and everyone was very competitive. This was arguably one of the most competitive West races we had seen in a while. And we had 3 entries for women this week. Unlike the last one, we had 5. We have Jolyn Wilkinson back. We had Amber Slagle back in the 17, and, of course, the full-timer Bridget Burgess. All 3 ladies tonight, I feel like, did a good job. Even though they got the cars, even though everyone in their group was beating the heck out of each other. And even Amber finally got a top 10 after struggling in her first 2 races that she had competed in this year. But the action started off very quickly. 26 laps in, we had one of the Kart Idaho teams, which had 4 cars here this weekend. The low-budget Kart Idaho team certainly is not low budget when it comes to bringing out all the cars. They had the 08 with long time, which would be a West racer, John Wood, kind of been a mainstay in the West circuit for many years. He spun out early and pretty much struggled the rest of the night. I believe he actually ran the whole race on one set, so when he spun around, I believe he killed his tires. To the point where he just had to nurse the car home despite being a full race entry. I'm not quite sure about that, but judging by his speeds, it looked like he was just trying to nurse it home. And then on lap 41, the Kamree did go for a spin. Luckily, it didn't damage the tires because I believe Bobby did try to run that whole race on the same set of tires. No damage to the car, luckily. Nobody clipped him. But then the action came at the next caution. Just 2 laps later, Taylor Gray, as much as he's been called Wrecker Gray, he kind of got turned by the 33 Pedroncelli and another car. I don't quite remember who it was, but the 17, he getting wrecking people, he got wrecked. And he got wrecked hard. Because he really had nowhere to go. And hang on, I'm trying to pull up some notes here, but he got wrecked hard, and I believe he hit the wall with the rear of the car, and then I was happy that he wrecked, and then I was sad because poor Josh Fanopoulos, the guy who's been driving the green car, this just plain green, like this car would stick out on the track. You could not miss this car, and it was a good car for Josh. I don't know where this car came from. I want to say it was a former Velocity car, but I don't know that for sure. Take that with a grain of salt. But it was a good car. It was a really good car, good piece. And he just clobbered Gray, right? I think it was nose to nose. 17 car was killed. And the 21, I'm hoping that it was just cosmetic damage. More than likely a radiator will need replaced too, but I'm really hoping that nothing serious damage on the car and that Josh can be with us at Phoenix because he's one of those underdog guys, and this was another Kart Idaho team. Despite many entries and even a top 10 finish, which we'll get into later, the Kart Idaho team had a rough night. Really rough night. Yeah, so that was kind of sad to see. The 80 of Brian Comiskey also got damage, but he was able to continue on and actually would finish the race. But was happy to see Taylor Gray get kind of some comeuppance, you know what I mean? But unfortunately, it also took out one of my underdog favorites of the West Circuit as well. 5 laps later, actually, the 80 would go into spin again. It was a rough night for poor Brian, but at least he was able to finish and still get a top 15 finish out of the race itself. We also had a surprising guy running competitive as well, Travis Milburn, who's also been kind of a mainstay in the West Series. One of the leaders at Kart Idaho Racing was racing an amazing car tonight. Now, we saw at the last race and this race that velocity racing is not really no longer a thing. It was actually run by current NASCAR truck driver Jack Wood. He owned the team. But the team kind of fizzled out, merged with the Kart Idaho team. They sold a lot of their equipment to them and sold their cars to a couple of other teams. But if you watch the race, you could easily see that the Velocity logo, now the car is still registered under Jack Wood, but you can still see that the Velocity Racing on it. It was a good piece. This was a good car, and Travis showed, man, he may not be the most competitive driver, but give him some good equipment, and he was going. He was absolutely going in that car. I think got as high as 4th at one point, but unfortunately got wrecked. And that was kind of the common theme with the race. You'd run up front, then get wrecked. And although that 33 car would go on to have a very successful finish to this race, which we'll get into later, unfortunately, the 33 car was also involved in quite a few incidents tonight as well. And unfortunately for the 78 team, I believe they had to come in and get tires. They lost a couple of laps by doing that, and unfortunately, the night would not prove to get any better as they would fail to finish the race, a disappointing 20th, which was sad to see, obviously. But actually, out of the Kart Idaho team, in the last 5 positions, they included 3 of their cars. So it was a tough night for the Kart Idaho Wood Racing team. It really was. But still, always happy to see them there because they are a mainstay of the series, and I believe they deserve more support. But coming back, Dean Thompson, who actually won the pole. It was a feel-good story to see a guy who he was a contender for the championship, was Dean Thompson, but unfortunately due to health issues, I don't know the full details of what happened. You'd have to go read the transcript on his Twitter. But unfortunately, he had to miss a race or two, and it pretty much took him out of the championship hunt. But he came back with a vengeance. This is it's a Bruncati Racing merger team because I believe he does race Sunrise Ford logos. So the car itself may be coming from Bob Bruncati's team. It's a good piece. Bob still makes good cars to this day. And unfortunately, they blew a tire, spun around, lost a couple of laps, and they had a disappointing finish despite winning the pole of only 17th, which again is just, I believe they've made it back into the top 11 in points, but not going to get much better. And a couple laps later, we had the ladies, which, you go back to Vegas, the ladies kind of got into each other, and once again, they got into each other here. The 1 of Jolyn and the 88 of Bridget got into each other, which just shows, man, those girls, they're tough. They're beating and banging on each other. They may be for 12th or 13th, but they're still beating the crap out of each other out on track to get the best dang finishing position they can. I'll admit, though, I was expecting a little bit more out of Jolyn, mainly because she is racing a full McAnally car. Bridget, she's been using the same car all season, And look at her just running right there with Jolyn. I figured Jolyn would run top 10, and I hope for better things out of her next year, but kind of shocked she didn't run a little bit better than she did in tonight's race, because this was really her first race where she didn't have really any issues other than the spin. By this point, we still had 19 of our 23 cars on the track, and at this little third mile track, that's a lot of cars. We still had plenty of time for all you-know-what to break loose, and well, it may have just been 20 laps to go after that caution with the ladies, but all heck did break loose, that's for sure. After another quick spin by Takuma Koga, the leaders got into it, restarted the race with just 13 laps to go. And going into turn one, now I don't put the blame on Jake Drew, and I don't put the blame on any of Cole Moore either. But they were going into turn one, and fourth place, I believe he was in fourth place at the time, the 54 of Joey East, full send into one, didn't clean him out, just gave the 99 a shove, basically giving them no chance to make the corner, and the 99 would then turn around the 9, and unfortunately the 16 of Jesse Love had just nowhere to go. So I think the top three in the championship, all wiped out in the first corner. And all of a sudden, fourth place in the championship and fifth place are now 1 and 2, I believe they were. And race restarted again. And who happens to get wrecked again? Coming, I believe this was to the white flag. Jesse Love gets wrecked by second place in the championship, Jake Drew. Now, does that stem from anything this season? I don't believe so, from what I've seen. But just out of randomness, Jake Drew wrecks the 16, and unfortunately, the 16 lost a lap, which relegated them to no better than 12th place, losing even more points. Now, Jesse Love would go on Twitter. Hopefully, the tweet is still up. Let's look it up right now. Bear with me for a second here, guys. But he would tweet out, and it looks like, here it is. He said, and I quote, "Led laps tonight, and we kept our car clean. Felt like we raced our championship competitors with respect this year. But that didn't respect go both ways. We got wrecked by the 9 who we were racing against for the championship. But my approach to Phoenix is narrowed down. Just run hard. Thank you, God, Napa Racing, BMR, Toyota Racing, and everyone else who makes this possible." And well, I can agree. At the end of the day, Jesse was not racing the 9 hard, and the 9 did just blatantly dump him. But what that did was cause even more problems for the 9. I don't know if he got penalized, but he was still at the back of the field. And he really couldn't recover, because in ARCA, the one thing I love about ARCA is races in ARCA will never end under caution unless it's due to rain or darkness. And that rarely happens, considering that the most short tracks they go to don't really have darkness issues, because they all have lights. And we had a 1-lap shootout. And in my heart, guys, I was just pounding. I loved Joey East. I loved his West team. But second place, PJ Pedroncelli, the family-owned team, my heart was pounding, absolutely pounding, wanting this guy to get a win. They threw the green flag, and he did it textbook. Did it textbook. He was rubbing on him, going down the backstretch. And into turn 3, did the classic get out of my way. And PJ Pedroncelli, the family-owned team, gets his first career win. And you guys saw me on Twitter. I was ecstatic. I was absolutely ecstatic. I was so happy for him. Burn that baby to the ground, even though they can't really afford to. But I was so happy. The family-owned team, who has really done a great job this season. They've invested a lot of money into their equipment, and they've been right there every single week. They've only struggled at a couple of races. You know, it's the classic, the father starting parking one car to help fund the son. I mean, it's you can't give me a reason not to root for this team for the championship. It was such a feel-good moment, and then Charles Crawl on the broadcast said they were tied. They weren't, but still very close, and a mere 1 point. Now, again, Jesse Love, although he did finish sixth back in, or top 10 finish, I believe it was sixth place back in February when they went to Phoenix or March or February. He did not do good in the race there last fall. I think he only finished about 14th. So for BMR, they got to make sure they have a good setup, because that West race at Phoenix, it has a maximum starting field of 34 cars before we start to see DNQs. I think there's a legitimate possibility that we may, I don't think we'll have DNQs, but we might just reach that 34 car field. That West race always draws a lot of East and West competitors. I know Venerini has already confirmed they will be there. Andy Hillenberg will more than likely be there with 2 cars. Let's see here, who else? I could see the Bruce Cook racing team. I could see the RSS racing team as well, bringing a car down for Kyle Sieg. No, not Kimmel. But still a big field nonetheless. Almost probably 30 cars. So they got to be able to nail these setups right. But it's not just Paul Pedroncelli who still has a chance. Paul Pedroncelli Jr. has a chance. Although Cole Moore fell to 5th, he's still only 6 points out. Logistically, right now, this is a 7-car race for the championship. 7th place, Todd Souza, is only 26 points back. Now, he would be considered the long shot. But right now, we'll have more than 26 entries at that race, confirmed. It's already confirmed that we will have more than 26 entries at that race. So logistically, it's a 7-car race for the championship. The top 5 are separated by just 6 points. This is the battle NASCAR wishes they could have. 7 guys separated by just 26 points going into a almost 30-car field championship race. I mean, the West race at Phoenix, guys, I know it's all about championship weekend, man. Trucks, Xfinity, and Cup. But do not sleep on that ARCA race. You have a bunch of young guys who are going at it all out, because it could be their year. It could be their season. It could determine their budget for next season. So, yeah, we have Jesse in first by 1. PJ's in second, 1 back. Jake Drew is 3 back. Joey East is 5 back. Cole Moore is 6 back in 5th. And 6th, Trevor Huddleston is 15 back. And then Todd Souza is in 7th, 26 back. Just an amazing statistic, the fact that 7 guys logistically have a chance at this championship. And it just, my only worry is that PJ's team doesn't really have the best funding for these bigger tracks. He didn't have a bad run at the first Phoenix race this season with the ARCA main series merger race, but he didn't light the world on fire. But you got to believe they have their car ready already, and they're putting, I would say without a doubt, the best dang parts they got into that car. The one thing they got to make sure, do not overdrive it. But it's going to be a short race. I believe it's just going to be 100 laps. It's not going to be anything fast, anything slow, anything methodical. It's going to be go, go, go. And that's why the races are usually so chaotic, because these stages for the stage breaks are so short that you got to go. You got to go early with the tires. You can't manage them. You got to go. You got a mandatory break coming up. Just run the tires off of her. Just don't wreck it. Now, it's not this weekend. It's almost actually a month away. It's a long ways away. So these West teams have plenty of time to get their cars ready. But obviously, My pick is PJ. I want PJ to win the championship. He's the sentimental favorite. He's the low-budget team that everyone likes to see succeed. It would basically be the equivalent to seeing Brett Holmes dethrone Venerini a couple years ago. I like Bill McAnally, but it'd be great to see somebody else get the championship for once. Great to see Sunrise has both of their cars up there contending. And then there's old Todd Souza, a mainstay in the West Circuit for many, 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 many years. He logistically still has a chance at the championship, and it just points at this. If he had not had the bad race at Portland, he'd probably be less than 20 points out of the championship and would have an even better shot at it going into Phoenix. Excuse me, guys. But I'm just so excited for this, honestly. I really am. I think it's going to be just one heck of a battle, and I hope you guys tune into it with me. But yeah, PJ getting the win, the feel-good win, and it did really spread around until the next day. You know, a lot of my buddies chiming in the feel-good story and hoping that he can win the championship. And even you could see in the commentator's voice what this would mean to see the family-owned team. You know, very rarely in this day and age do you see the family-owned team beating the fully backed, fully sponsorshiped, high-dollar team. I mean, this is basically you could say the equivalent of, let's go with Jeremy Clements. This is basically the equivalent of the Jeremy Clements team if they were able to dethrone a Gibbs car for the championship. That's basically what I equivalent this to in the NASCAR world. Because PJ's team's very competitive. They just don't have the highest budget, and they have to have their, so to say, backup car help fund the team. But outside of that, Joey East still finished second. Not like he got his whole race ruined. Trevor Huddleston still finished third. Todd Souza finished fourth. Cole Moore finished fifth. And arguably one of my favorite, Stafford Smith. We talked earlier about the CART Idaho team having issues. Stafford Smith, he's been racing in a lot of the best cars. But they stayed clean out all day, stayed out of trouble, and got a solid sixth-place finish. I was so happy for Stafford and the entire CART Idaho team. Although the setback with the bottom three finishers out of the last five, they're able to keep their heads held high with a good, solid top 10 finish. Christian Rose in his second start for the Bruce Cook Racing team. Second straight top 10. Solid night for them. I don't believe he'll be at Phoenix. I don't know if he's been cleared yet for that track. Hopefully he will be. Hopefully we'll see the Bruce Cook Racing team there either way with the driver. Jake Drew was relegated to 8th. Takuma Koga, another top 10. Takuma's been having a really good season this year. He's a little older. People don't realize that Takuma Koga's in his mid-40s. You know, he's not a young guy anymore, but he's starting to mature as a driver. Amber got her first top 10, as I mentioned earlier. Bridget got 11th, and only 11 cars finished on the lead lap. Jesse Love, as I mentioned, was stuck a lap down in 12th. Brian Comiskey was 13th. Caleb Costner, who was great to see him run after not being able to run at Portland due to a transmission failure. Jolin was 15th. 16th was Andrew Tuttle, another one of the CART Idaho cars. 17th, as we mentioned, was Dean Thompson. 18th was the Kamree of Bobby Hillis in its last race. And, of course, as we mentioned, John Wood, last guy running. Great race overall. I guarantee you guys watch the NBC replay. You'll be highly entertained, but the NBC replay won't do it justice. You need to have the track pass. Watch Charles do it by himself, and you guys will see an overall better product. Because in my opinion, I'm not being biased here, but you didn't see manufactured cautions. I mean, other than you didn't see manufactured cautions. You saw a good old-fashioned short track race with a bunch of – you had the rookies who didn't know what they were doing. You had everything you wanted in a modern-day short track stock car race. You have the rookies who have no idea what they're doing out there. You got a couple of women involved who are beating and banging like they've been out there for a decade. You got the old guy with the old car that can barely run competitive. And then you got the family-owned team beating out the big guns in a rare win. Everything you want in a short track race happened on Saturday night. Something that's why I still prefer watching ARCA so much, because you will never see that in today's NASCAR world. I'm a huge fan of Jeremy Clements. I'm one of Jeremy Clements' biggest supporters. I will always support that guy. And just unfortunately, the logistics of him going up there and passing, Gibbs or Junior or Colleague for the win, it's just sadly not going to happen unless a miracle happens like we saw at Road America. And I wish it would happen every week. There'd be nothing more to be able to see that car go to victory lane so many times. It'd be awesome. But in ARCA, you see that a lot, and it's just good to see. But yeah, so that was kind of the West race. Great race overall. Congratulations to Paul Pedroncelli Jr., a.k.a. PJ Pedroncelli. Might try to get him on the show when the West season is done. I'd love to have him on, talk about the family ownership. But some big news. Transitioning from West, little bit of West news before we get to main ARCA. Bill McAnally Racing announces a switch in manufacturers. I believe, now they did run Chevrolets before, but I think it had been almost 15 years since they had ran a Chevrolet with Toyota back, and they had Toyota backing ever since. Bill McAnally Racing switches from Toyota back to Chevrolet with the announcement that their truck team will now be running Chevrolets as well with Derek Kraus and Colby Howard. That is big news for the ARCA series, because sadly what that does is for the West Circuit, that does not, I don't believe that leaves a fully Toyota back race team. The only Toyota teams that would leave would be Jerry Pitts Racing and Precision Performance PP1 Motorsports. I think that's what they call it. The Joe Nava team. And I don't believe those are fully Toyota back teams. I feel like those are teams that just run Toyota equipment. Kind of like Carl Long in the Xfinity series. He kind of just runs Toyotas when he's not really a Toyota affiliated team, sadly, which would be really nice. I wish that guy could get some legit Toyota engines. But that was big news, because right now we really don't have a fully backed Toyota team in the West Series. And that could hurt. I don't think it would necessarily hurt the West Series, but judging by how much Toyota has been killing it in the main circuit, not having that type of team in the main circuit, not having that type of support in the West Circuit would be a kind of a huge fall, sadly. But we'll probably still see Jerry Pitts and PP1 Motorsports supporting the Toyota name next year. Even Paul, the Pedroncelli team, runs Toyotas out of their fleet. They kind of run all the manufacturers because that's basically what they can get their hands on. And then Josh Vanopoulos and his team, the Cart Idaho team, have a couple of Toyotas in their shop too. But definitely a big announcement. BMR going back to Chevrolets. Be weird, but it's not the first time we've seen the Napa colors riding on a Chevrolet, that's for sure. But it'd definitely be interesting to see where Toyota is going to land in the West Circuit next year. Considering that they've won pretty much all the races this season in all three divisions. Pretty much Toyota's just been, you could say, just murdering the ARCA series this year. I mean, I don't think Ford does. I don't believe Ford has a win in ARCA this year. I could be wrong. I'm pretty sure. I want to say I'm wrong. I believe one of the Bob Brancati cars won a race. But take that with a grain of salt. But definitely big news today that team did not make it. Oh, did not make it. What am I saying? Did switch manufacturers. And I'm waiting to see how they perform with Chevrolets next season. Moving on, we mentioned the whole Bobby Hillis Chevrolet deal. Link will be down in the description. Moving on to Kansas. Now, Kansas is not this weekend. It's actually the next weekend, but I figured I'd bring it part of the show anyway. since we'll do kind of a preview this week, small preview this week, and then do a whole preview show next Wednesday. I like to personally make my own entry lists of possible teams who I feel like will show up, sometimes even DM teams on social media, see if they're going to be there. And right now, again, this is not the real entry list, not the real one. But right now, my entry list has approximately 27 to 28 entries on it. And honestly, it'd be huge. It'd be the biggest ARCA field at Kansas since 2016. That's really saying something. But I believe I had another confirmation today when I posted the tweet out of the 2022 full-time drivers. We had Ron Vandermeer Jr., who's made a couple of starts this season, kind of hinted that he may be at Kansas. And it'd be great to have, the more the merrier. It's the championship race. I'm hoping the goal is to get 30 entries. That ARCA at these bigger tracks, all they need is a big field to put on a good show. The drafting package that ARCA has is a good package. We just need more cars to really show it off. And Kansas has always been the strongest track for guys like Corey Heim and guys like Brett Holmes. So Ty Gibbs more than likely would not run away with it. He might still come close to winning, but he may not just run away with it like he did back in May. But yeah, the different entries I have right now, we have Raja running. We have 2 possible Brett Holmes entries because right now it's listed that Sam Mayer was scheduled to run a second entry. Greg Van Alst will more than likely run. Tony Breidinger will run a 4th Venerini entry in the 55. Andy Jankowiak and Scott Melton will both be there. More than likely Justin Carroll will be there. And we did get confirmation that who on the entry list? Oh, yeah. The 30 team, Red A Motorsports, will also be there with Chris Wright. So right now we have a good lineup of cars, but obviously we're going to get fully into it next week when the actual entry list comes out. I just wanted to give you guys what I have right now, and I hope that my entry list is smaller than the one that actually comes out, and we can have an even bigger field, you know? I also posted something on the Start and Park account last night about regarding what I right now have for my 2022 full-time driver lineup for ARCA. And what I posted was from what I've seen from various accounts of who is going to be the full-time ARCA drivers. Obviously, we've already got a couple confirmed. Nick Sanchez and Raja Karuth will be full-time next year for Rev Racing. It's not been confirmed yet, but I've heard from a lot of people that Sammy Smith will be running the 18 full-time next year. I believe also continued sponsorship from Engine Ice. Only problem is that Sam will not be 18 until June 4th of next year. So we would have to miss Daytona, Talladega, and let's see, what other big tracks they run before June? I think that's it. I want to say Michigan, but they usually run Michigan later in the year. I think it would be just 2 or 3. The first Kansas race. I forgot yet. First Kansas race. So at most 4 races maybe, which unfortunately would take him out of the Drivers' Championship. They'd probably have to put another guy in there, more than likely Ty Gibbs. But it would give JGR a chance to win the Owners' Championship again. Daniel Dye, GMS did confirm that they will have an ARCA program next year. Daniel is old enough and cleared to run all the races next year. He will participate in Daytona testing next year for GMS. I don't have a confirmed driver yet. We don't know if Corey Heim's going to be back yet. I do have at least one full-time Venerini driver in my lineup for full-time drivers, but we don't know who that is yet, but I do believe Venerini will have one full-time driver going for the championship. Greg Van Alst has expressed interest in running the whole season, but unfortunately that is all sponsorship dependent. Hopefully he can find it because Greg, we saw what he could do back at Winchester. He has a shot at this championship if he tried to do it. And like you and me, fingers crossed that he can get there. I did put down Thad Moffitt, but then some people corrected me that he'll be trying to run some Xfinity races next year. With all due respect to Thad Moffitt, he's just not been that good. He's been kind of disappointing, honestly, in his 3 big years of ARCA with DGR, because DGR is a team that, that's been winning races left and right. But unfortunately, Thad just hasn't had much success. I do believe he will still make some ARCA starts next season, but it looks like from what I've heard, he will not be attempting a full season. And then, of course, good old Brad Smith. Even his Twitter account tweeted out today, bearing any unforeseen circumstances, which would basically mean anything happens to the car or Brad himself, logistically, he will be there. Reality is he'll be there full-time next season. But that's great to see that right now we do have more than 2 full-time drivers confirmed for this year after only having 2 this year. We were going to have 4, but I already talked about on why we're down to 2. But, like one of my buddies and I predicted, 2020, which was just, oh my God, 2020 was the saddest ARCA season ever. But it's okay. With payouts and COVID, it hurt so many teams. It was sad to see. And the fact that ARCA's made it out of it and is slowly starting to grow back, it's good to see as well. And having some more full-time drivers, Gibbs is not going to run away with the championship next year. Gibbs won't even win the Drivers' Championship next year. Personally, I would say out of all these choices, I'll have to see who Venerini gets for a full-time driver, but I could definitely say that Raja winning the 2022 championship, not out of the realm of possibility at all. We also got to wonder, Nick Sanchez does have an advantage, as Nick will be racing at pretty much 95% of the races that were ran this year will be on the same schedule for next year. So think about that. Daniel Dye, I would say logistically, my pick for this championship next year right now is Daniel Dye. But the guy who I'd like to see run the full season and go for the championship and possibly win would be Greg Van Alst. And that's kind of it for the notes I got for today's show, guys. We had a lot to cover today. As always, I'm trying to get some guests on the show. Expect more from trying to get guests on the show when the season's over. I'm going to definitely reach out to a lot of West people like the Pedroncelli team, the Burgess Racing team, especially Bobby Hillis. I would love nothing more to get Bobby on the show. Might even try to get Andy Hillenberg. You never know. I got some friends who know Andy. I would love to get Andy Hillenberg, and I'd love to even get Brad on the show. Lots of people, lots of choices. We also have a new show debuting tomorrow around the same time, 4:30ish, called Backmarker Battles, covering a lot of the battles that, a lot of people who watch racing don't really know about, from Cup to Trucks to Xfinity to all 3 divisions of ARCA. As always, got to thank Menards for supporting ARCA. And if you guys if you're in the Midwest and you're coming to the Kansas Xfinity race, stay after. Watch the ARCA Kansas race, the Reese's 150 championship race. I'll have a good time. I'll be there crewing. Thanks again, guys. Cannot shout out everyone who donated. We doubled our goal. $3,800 on the GoFundMe for Brad's Tires. Not 1, but 2 sets of stickers. Again, just cannot thank you guys enough for your support. I'm currently in the process of getting a sticker made. We had 28 people who donated. So the way I'm going to do is we're going to have 14 people on 1 sticker on the left side of the car. And we're going to have 14 people on a sticker on the right side of the car. I hope that's okay with you guys. But that's the easiest way I thought I would do this. As always, everyone, I will personally put everyone's name on a tweet. Everyone will get a shout out, including some extra special ones who just blowed me away with some of their donations. But lots of up-and-coming things coming for this show. Thank you guys for your support. And I hope you guys join me next week for the championship preview show. I've been Colby Evans, Start and Park Car. Go follow Brad. Go follow ARCA. Go follow myself. And go follow Bobby Hillis to go buy an old Dale Earnhardt car. You guys have a good day, and I'll see you next Wednesday on the ARCA Racing Podcast, but I'll be here tomorrow for backmarker battles. So long.